£250,000, 22 identical sealed boxes, and no questions except one. Deal or no deal? Welcome to Crystal Racing, here with a race reaction to yesterday's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Why did I use that quote line? Well, it's from an old game show called Deal or No Deal. I used to watch it growing up as a kid in Britain. Funnily enough, though, it was a game show that was invented in the Netherlands, which of course is the country that Max Verstappen comes from. Also the same country that also brought us Big Brother. Frankly, Michael Masi and the FIA have completely lost control of Formula 1 now. I mean, when you get to a point where, you know, you hear the live radio communications where Michael Masi was negotiating with Red Bull over where to stop Max Verstappen due to, of course, Max Verstappen jumping ahead of Lewis Hamilton at the restart illegally, but of course due to Ocon being involved in a whole mess as well. I really don't know where the hell this sport is heading anymore. I mean, aside from the fact that the Saudi Arabian track we visited was absolutely ridiculous in its layout, you know, a high-speed track with the sort of average lap times you see at Spa-Francorchamps and Silverstone, with the barriers lined around the track as if it's Monaco. I mean, it really does ring alarm bells as to what sort of sport we're seeing out here. I get the feeling that, you know, Formula 1 is now becoming more of a drama flick for, of course, Netflix, since, of course, you know, Formula 1 under Liberty Media seem to be more interested in generating clickbait, generating internet hits, generating, you know, just idiotic pieces of waffle, really, where, you know, everyone wants to have a skirmish all the time. But you gotta realise, though, when the rules are not clear, when no one knows, when everyone's constantly arguing over who should have been penalised, what should have happened, etc., there's something seriously wrong with race control, and Michael Masi needs to answer before all of us, because the thing with Charlie Whiting was that he followed a set, you know, the rule book as closely as he possibly could. What happened when Max Verstappen slowed down and Lewis Hamilton hit him was a classic case of race control not making it clear over how to make Max Verstappen return the position. I mean, now yes, Max Verstappen deserved to be penalised because he slowed down on the racing line, but the fact of the matter is, they didn't. I mean, maybe they could have told Max Verstappen when to slow down, what part of the track to slow down, maybe. Now, obviously, it's Max's obligation to get out of the way in the correct manner, but I mean, you could argue Max Verstappen tried to slow down at the worst part of the track. Maybe Max Verstappen could have slowed down around, I don't know, halfway through the track. You know, somewhere like just after one of the slower corners, maybe coming out of the slower corners, that, you know, go through the corner, and then instead of accelerating, just allow Lewis to go around the outside and overtake him, and then get back on the accelerator and chase Lewis again. I mean, yes, I know Max did do that earlier on in the race. That was maybe a tad questionable, but, you know, I know there was controversy because I know some people said, well, he slowed down and then he overtook him at the following corner. Now, I know, of course, people talk about the 2008 Belgian Grand Prix when Lewis Hamilton did exactly that with Kimi Räikkönen, when Lewis Hamilton cut the track and then he slowed down to let Kimi pass, only to re-overtake him at the La Source hairpin, which, of course, saw Lewis Hamilton slap with a 25-second penalty. Max Verstappen didn't get any penalty, which is really strange, and, you know, it's really just come down to Michael Masi and the FIA not being very clear. It does seem like this attitude of just letting them race has now gone a bit too far, because now there's no real direction over how to race, how to give back positions, how to obey the rules. When when is it appropriate to cut the corners if another driver's squeezing you? When the hell, you know, when is it appropriate to push drivers to go wheel to wheel? How far can you push the limits? Because honestly, I don't think Michael Masi knows what he's doing. And if you're one of those people who sit there and think, well, you know, Michael Masi's more qualified than you, an armchair view to oversee a race, well, that's the stupidest thing that, you know, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's more qualified than you to manage Man United, because I mean, as an average armchair viewer, you can just see how bad they are. It's not a debate. When everyone's arguing, when everyone feels so dissatisfied, this is a real problem. It's not just Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have been doing all this sort of stuff. I mean, earlier on in the race, Bottas, I think, was deliberately slowing Max Verstappen down because of course Lewis Hamilton was going into the pits during the virtual safety car after Mick Schumacher's crash. Mercedes and Bottas were scared that Max was going to pit as well, so Bottas deliberately slowed Max down. That's got to be illegal in my book, and how Bottas didn't get a penalty for that, I am amazed. But of course I think a lot of it probably then came down to the fact that because the red flag was flown out, Max Verstappen, they got a free pit stop, which of course, it does seem as if the FIA do seem to question their own rules during a race. Like, it does seem, I mean, there's a lot of arguments over whether a free pit stop is a good idea. And it is questionable because essentially you do away having to lose the time loop, having to do a pit stop, and it does seem as if they decided not to bother punishing Bottas because Bottas did fell behind at the restart and was never a factor in the race after that. But even so, you still have to punish him because under the rules it's illegal to slow down cars during virtual safety car and safety car periods way below the speed that everyone is going at. It's just ridiculous. And what can I say? Just Fernando Alonso was also at it in the past few races, cutting the corner at Russia at the start. Was that really on? I don't think so, but he got away with it because the FIA don't really know how to police their rules anymore. And of course, Kimi Raikkonen's been doing a few stupid things as well because, I think at Mexico he cut the pit lane when they threw a red flag during qualifying and got away with it because, well, he cut the pit lane, but then he returned back onto the track because, of course, I think the rules were not very clear at that point. Was he allowed to go back into the pit lane when a red flag is flown out? It's very confusing because he then did another lap up the circuit whilst they cleared up the wreckage for Lance Stroll's crash. I mean, it's all really stupid now. I don't even understand the rules anymore. I mean, the FIA need to really put their foot down and iron out all these nooks and crannies. I mean, the circuit itself is a complete joke. The Jeddah circuit is just an absolute eyesore, really. I mean, it does seem to be unfortunate. The worst thing, though, about this race is that this race did generate a lot of attention, but for the wrong reasons. But under the Liberty media regime, it seems to be all about attention. No matter how good or bad it is, it's eyes on the TV screen, as long as it's Formula 1. But this is not the Formula 1 I fell in love with as a 10-year-old. Now, back in my day, yeah, I'm that old, Schumacher and Montoya would go at it really hard on track, but the thing is, though, you never saw them do anything egregious like cutting corners or literally blatantly shoving each other up the track because Charlie Whiting knew how to oversee a race. He knew how to make sure that drivers wouldn't breach the rules in such a stupid manner. I mean, you've got to realise there were poor but fair drivers like Villeneuve, Irvine, and so on and so forth, and Hakkinen, to name but a few. But, it does seem to be that the FIA are very, very reactive in terms of the social media reaction, in particular in regards to what happened at the 2019 Canadian Grand Prix, where, you know, Sebastian Vettel went off the track and cut the corner, went over the grass and kept his position, but clearly slowed Hamilton down in the process. I mean, I know they handed Vettel a 5-second penalty, but you could argue they should have, Vettel should have, you know, let Lewis pass so that they could continue racing and Vettel would have not got a penalty. I mean, but of course, because they gave Vettel the 5-second penalty, the whole race just died at that point because Vettel got annoyed and just was like, just raged over the radio for the last 30 odd laps. I mean, and it does seem to be the FIA and Michael Masi cowered in the corner over that, and then of course it allowed, I mean, as a result, there were two very debatable results after that. You know, the Austrian Grand Prix where Max Verstappen clearly shoved Leclerc right off the track on the final lap, but of course the FIA decided that Max could keep the win because they didn't want to be seen as tinkering with the race result. And of course it happened again at Monza when Leclerc won after shoving Lewis Hamilton off the track. I mean, again, they probably should have punished Leclerc, but instead they gave him a black and white flag for unsporting behaviour. It's just, I mean, at this point the FIA and Michael Masi need to come out and tell us how on earth they are going to oversee races and stop this nonsense, because look, I'm not interested in watching, you know, jokes like yesterday's race where, you know, teams are arguing with the FIA and negotiating over positions, you know, arguing over what the nature of the penalty should be, who should give way, and all that nonsense. It's like, you know, every driver and every team is now pushing the rules to the limit because they know the FIA are not watertight with their regulations, and they don't, and you know, they'll continue arguing about it post-race because I don't really think the FIA honestly know what their own rule book is, and I don't think Michael Masi honestly knows what he's doing. I mean, I know a lot of people say he should be sacked, but it does seem to be a very FIA thing. And is this what Liberty Media want everyone to be like, just full of entertainment? Do they just want to fill the tracks up like with Jeddah and Baku, where every track is a street circuit where, you know, if a driver goes offline, they're straight into the barriers and we have a safety car, a red flag every time? So we can just have like 3 or 4 sprint races every weekend instead of having to actually, you know, resort to having an actual sprint race like we do right now on 3 or 4 weekends per season, because it just doesn't feel like Formula 1 anymore. It just feels like a drama piece where the sport is just trying to catch attention for whatever reason, because they want to create these sort of WWE style beefs, these NASCAR style beefs. It's like, it's all becoming so Americanized, this sport. I mean, you gotta realise one of the most satisfying seasons of Formula 1 was 2007. Yes, I know I'm kind of biased, but the thing is though, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso had been beefing the whole year, but Kimi Raikkonen ended up being a very popular champion by the neutrals front because he didn't get involved in any sort of dirty tricks throughout the year, and he drove what was a perfectly legal car. Now, I know a lot of the drama that happened in 2007 did come off track, especially with Spygate, but the fact of the matter is, even though there wasn't necessarily a lot of on-track overtaking, the fact of the matter is, with the title race going back and forth between McLaren and Ferrari that year, it was good to watch, even though we didn't see any big overtakes in the end. It all just naturally happened, and the same as what happened in 2008, where, you know, what happened on the last lap with Lewis Hamilton overtaking Timo Glock at the final corner on the final lap of the race. It was all organic, it was real, it actually happened. Yes, I know, obviously there were a few FIA decisions which swung the points between Massa and Hamilton back and forth. I know the decision to give Hamilton a 25-second penalty at Spa was probably the most egregious. But the thing is, though, yes, you can argue the FIA manipulated that championship to some extent. You know, some claim they were trying to favour Massa and Ferrari, but you gotta realise, though, I don't think they could foresee what would happen at Singapore with Renault fixing the race by getting Piquet to crash out and Massa getting that disastrous pit stop. Look, I know obviously the FIA has never been 100% perfect with their decision making, but yesterday's race, it was literally not only the drivers at it, but it was also the teams trying to manipulate the FIA out in the open. I mean, look, I mean, if the future of Formula 1 is going to be full of tracks like Baku and Saudi, I mean, you know, with the likes of Silverstone and Monza and maybe, I don't know, I mean, somewhere like, I don't know, another track like maybe, I don't know, like maybe, I don't know what tracks we even race on anymore. Maybe another classic track like the A1 ring being abandoned. Maybe, I don't know, another classic track like Suzuka being binned, like, and instead being replaced by these sort of street circuits where, you know, one mistake and the driver is in a war and all that sort of nonsense. I'm not really up for it anymore. And the sad thing is that we don't even have that many classic tracks in Formula 1 anymore. You know, Silverstone, Suzuka. I know Suzuka's currently not on the calendar because of the pandemic, but, you know, other places like Spa-Francorchamps. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of paved runoffs everywhere. I mean, that's another problem, isn't it? Paved runoffs. I mean, the days having grass and gravel in the runoff areas are pretty much almost dead at this point. So, you know, drivers are willing to push each other off the track because, you know, the other driver is not actually going to suffer that much of a penalty if they go off the track or whatever, because there's no grass or gravel to slow them down anymore. It's just turning into a joke, and I'm not really up for it anymore. I know this has been a very negative video, but I really do feel like the sport has lost its direction, and it's not a very satisfying spectacle anymore. And, you know, I have to say, when Kimi Räikkönen retires from F1 next weekend, I'm kind of tempted to stop watching Formula 1 altogether. Not because I mean, I will always be a Formula 1 fan, but, you know, I don't want to sit there and waste my time watching this sort of nonsense, arguing over stupid things like this. It's not really fulfilling. It's not really enjoyable. I just find it almost farcical, pathetic, childish, toxic, idiotic. Name whatever buzzword you want. I'm not interested. I mean, it could well be after next week's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, I'll just be doing old history throwback videos about F1 in the past, but I will stop talking about F1 in the present because I don't really enjoy the sport as it is anymore. It just seems all wrong. It just seems like it's all driven for entertainment. It's not a real fight anymore. It just seems to be entertainment. You know, hits every lap of the race. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.